connected. It's all connected. It's all a big circle. But we won't get to the ACEs. Our speaker, Dr. Charles Zini, whom I have come to have such great respect for. I'm so glad I got connected to him through First Lady Donna Edwards. Had to go. He thought that we would have gotten to him by now. So what I'm going to do for anybody who may still be waiting, which I almost hate to do, but I'm going to do. I'm going to actually put this on our next agenda, so we'll take this item up first in January. So if you're here waiting for adverse childhood experiences, we won't hear that today. We'll hear it in January. But all of this is all connected because it becomes a pattern. So, Ms. Porter, were you getting ready to speak or answer or respond?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
and introduce yourself, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Latoya Porter, and I run a mental health facility in the state of Louisiana, and I'm also a survivor of not trafficking but sexual abuse as a child. Um, so I want everyone to first think about Michelle's story, and then imagine having that exact same story being 9, 10, 11, 12. And imagine facing those horrors and doing exactly what we say, tell someone, Michelle has said over and over again, be seen, we need to see it. I think for me, sitting in this seat causes so much emotion for me because even though I'm not a survivor of sex trafficking, it has fell directly in my lap just recently through my work. And in doing so, we have done everything that we were supposed to do with trying to connect resources, trying to get help, trying to get law enforcement involved. And even with those things, our victims, now plural, were not heard. They were not seen. We talk about safe places. We talk about mandated reporting. Those things are all great. That's what we should be doing. That's what should happen. And it kind of brings up emotion for me because I was that kid as a person that was sexually abused that said something, that spoke out, that asked for help. And that fell through the cracks. And so I think what Senator Barrow and Senator Jackson spoke on in implementation is very important. And I think that's the greatest barrier of what we see happening right now. And that everyone coming to the table and really wanting to be uncomfortable and address the issue that in the state of Louisiana, we have a problem with sex trafficking and child abuse. Sexual abuse specifically. We have a problem with addressing it. We have a problem with being preventive, with hearing our children. For me, this has been a devastating experience because you are dealing with a child who is saying, this happened to me in my home by my parent. And are people associated with my parent. And no matter how many times you speak out, how many reports you filed, how many times you go to law enforcement, it takes forever to get something done. In my work, I kind of went through that process of finding purpose in my pain by doing this work. And in doing so, we are always faced with, I think Senator Barrow, Senator Jackson say, well, where do they go? Where do they go? When you cry out, when you report, when you say, I need help, then what? And one of the things that I've seen is it becomes almost a hopeless situation because many times they're going right back home with that same monster. And that's how it was in my case. And I'm 31 years removed from the last time I was sexually abused. And I said something. They won. They won, my teachers, to law enforcement. And DCFS was involved. We went down this road. And so it goes on to say that we not only continue to have a problem, we had a problem then, and it's worse now because our children are not being only sexually abused at home, but it's in the community. And we as a community, we have to get more intentional about how we respond to it. Because imagine, like I said, the horrors of Michelle's story and being a baby. You're 9 years old, you're 10 years old, And the person that is challenged with protecting you is selling you. And you say something. You say, help me, to everybody that will listen. And then nothing is done. And then we talk about the things that are perpetuated from that silence, from not being heard, from not being seen. Now we have mental illness. Now we have suicide attempts because we have lost hope. And I get so frustrated with hearing, oh, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, our village is very sick right now. No one is stepping up to the plate to be held accountable, and things are falling through the cracks. So who's going to raise our child if our villages are sick? That's my question.
Thank you. Dr. Hunter, what makes our state more vulnerable? There were some things that were mentioned during the conference in terms of the positioning of our state, ports. We are definitely a high contested state as it relates to sporting activities, which is also one of the factors. And in hearing one of the ladies that spoke, like you say, victorious women that spoke, but they are still hurting. I remember someone giving me this illustration, and I thought about doing this today because it was so vivid for me when they gave it in an explanation. And they took a piece of paper and they balled it up. And that's a person who's been damaged. Mm-hmm. And then you unball the paper. The paper's unballed, but it's still a lot of creases. There's still a lot of hurt and a lot of pain that they have to overcome. But in listening to the ladies there, somebody talked about what happens when a game is coming, or we have these big
sporting events.
Yeah. So what else makes us vulnerable? I mean, we have the ports. I think Representative Fiber brought up, what are we doing as it relates to trucking places, truck stops. And y'all know I know this very well. My husband did it as a profession. But what's happening in those spaces where we know makes us vulnerable and we know where it's happening?
So I'll say two things. We know we have the corridors, the interstate, the highways, things like that. But I'll say two things, and that's hurt people. Where there's deep entrenched poverty, you will find a lot of these incidences of incest, sexual assault, victimization. I remember working in Donaldsonville in a very impoverished community, and I provided mental health services. The number of children that I saw who lived in homes where there was incest was unimaginable. I'd never seen it before, had never heard of it before. Children in high school, these were high schoolers who had been sexually abused by their mom, dad, brothers, family members, uncles, relatives. It was deeply entrenched because of that poverty, because of the mental health, because of the lack of education, because of a lot of the generational things. So I'll say that. And the other thing I'll say is accountability. When we talk about laws being enforced or not enforced, we have to hold entities and people accountable. Mm-hmm. Where there's no accountability, things can quickly unravel. And so I think that's very important.
Okay. Thank you. Senator Jackson?
I lost my train of thought. Let me see if I can find it. No, it's good. I've been talking a lot. And I know she's gone from the table. This, for me, and that's why I keep hitting on this topic. When I first did Gwen's Law, we were in session in the House, and it hit TV that in West Baton Rouge, a 9 or 10-year-old had been living in her home and being sex trafficked by her mother's boyfriend. That he was babysitting her every day, and after school, he would bring different men and women over every day. And then, as you know, it was like a week-long thing. We were in session, and every time they arrested someone, they would pop up on the TV, and sometimes it'd be 2 or 3 people arrested in the same day. But it made me think about that as you were talking about how at 9 and 10, the removal from the home, and maybe DCFS can come up. The question is, when does the removal from the home happen? Because I keep just going back to that. When, of course, if someone's caught in the act, they're arrested immediately. But when a child decides to, or it gets enough, courage to say, hey, this is happening at my house, when does the removal from the home happen? Is it from the time of the first report, or is there a lapse in time between the child reporting it when someone's not caught in the act and the child or the person being removed from the home? Is there a removal from the home during investigation when the person is not caught in the act? I guess that's my question for whoever's here.
Seems like that would be a question for DCFS.
Because I know if law enforcement comes in, it may be immediately because the person is arrested. And the judge issues a stay-away order, even if the person receives bond. But my question has been, is when does removal from the home, if a child comes into school or reports to another adult that he or she is being abused and they're under the age of 18, what happens? When does removal from the home take place?
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Mona Michele. I'm with the Department of Children and Family Services. So the process that occurs is a report is initially called in. Whenever it meets the criteria for abuse or neglect that DCFS is responsible for investigating, it is assigned a level based on what is reported.
Right.
And so we have a certain time frame in which to respond based on that level that it's assigned. So if it's a school calling saying this child is in immediate danger, or
What's the time frame?
within a P1 is what we call a priority 1, is that's the standard time frame is said to be 24 hours. However, we will frequently get a call from law enforcement saying we're requesting immediate attention, we're requesting somebody to immediately respond, and we will assign an investigator who will go out immediately if it meets that criteria for acceptance of a report. So at that point, we do what's called a safety assessment. So we look at what are the threats of danger, what is immediately posing a danger to the child, and can there be a safety plan that's put in place to mitigate those safety concerns, whether it be a court-ordered safety plan, whether it be giving custody to a relative or working with a relative, or is it to the point that we have to call the judge to request custody? Ultimately, we say this many times, we can only request custody as a DCFS agency. The judge ultimately decides if we're granted custody or not.
Is there no circumstance where you take the child immediately out the home without contacting the judge? Like, is there a window of time?
DCFS does not have that authority to do so. We do not have the authority to remove a child without court intervention.
So I don't know what to call it. Do you know if other states have like a 48 period of time where DCFS in their state can place the child in a safe place until the judge reviews?
I'm not aware of any state that has that. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I'm not aware of it.
And I know we hinge on DCFS. I know we hinge on parental rights, but I think the paramount issue at that point, if a child has made an allegation, is the safety of that child.
Exactly.
When I hear young lady's story, it's like she was sent home. Even under that 24-hour window, that child can be sent back home. And that perpetrator is there. And, if the child, for all facts, is telling the truth, we just sent the child home who reported to their perpetrator. I think all of us, and not that it's your fault, it's the law, should see an issue with that. Like, what is the safety mechanism in place when a child reports?
Right. We do, just to kind of go back and fill in a little gap there as well, is that, if we do complete that safety assessment, if we are in a home and we assess that there's nothing that can be done to mitigate the safety concerns right then, we do have the ability to call a judge in every area of the state to say, this is what's going on, and the judge can issue an oral and standing order or custody order right then.
Okay, so is let's say a child walks up to a guidance counselor and says, I'm being sexually molested at home. The child has no marks on her, clean clothes, everything checks out but what the child said. Is that P1?
Well, okay, so the priority level, the P1 level that I mentioned to you, that's determined at the point that the call is made to DCFS. So that's what determines the time frame that we have to respond.
No, I
But
understand
once
that, but I'm
okay.
saying P1, you get it, you get the call. We have child A, she says that she's been molested. I know you're going to ask some questions. Does she have scars? Does she have bruises? All of that checks out. You just have the child's word that he or she is being molested in the home. Is that P1?
To say what every case is different. So to be able to say with certainty, I can't say that, but it would seem to be, based on just the facts that you've said, it would be meet the criteria for a
I think the
P1.
law should automatically make that a P1. Because most of the time, sexual abuse is not a visible type of abuse, you know, unless it
right.
goes along with someone beating them or something like that. Sexual abuse is not an on the surface. Child walks up to you. They could keep the child real clean. The child could have the best tutors and everything else. But if a father's or mother is sexually abusing a child, that's usually not. Sometimes it's surface, but in the higher kind of economic status homes, the child's going to look perfect in every other way.
Correct.
And so that is my concern that I would, and I know I'm asking a lot of questions, I'm trying to grasp what's happening. Because it's not always going to be that you walk up to the house and the house is dirty. Or did you walk up to the house and the house is in a bad neighborhood where the child is not safe? I mean, sometimes the only safety factor that's going to be there for a child that's being sex trafficked or sexually abused is the fact that he or she is being sexually abused. Then there becomes a gynecological appointment or something that says whether the child has been penetrated. Then you go through that phase to determine then whether or not the child has been penetrated. If the child has been penetrated and he or she is 9 years old, then you know automatically there's a problem. That dictates removal because you don't think a child that age is engaging in sexual activity. But let's say that the sexual abuse is not, and I'm very detailed, that's my criminal defense mind, right? Let's say that the child, and I've had one of these cases that I had to turn down. It was very hard, though, to distinguish whether that child was being sexually abused because the child was not penetrated. And the child didn't have videos and tapes or anything to show it until one of her friends came forward and said, hey, I was at their house and he tried to sexually abuse me. And that's not usually the case. And so you have a child that looks perfect in every way, no penetration, gynecological visit, checks out. Now you're on to the point where you're saying, is this child being touched in an inappropriate manner? So I think with there's so many levels
And
that
all of
people
these
think
cases are
it's,
difficult.
Now in your case, it sounds like to me, if someone would have just checked on you and did the exam, it would have shown that at an early age, either you're in sexual activity or something's happening in your home, and that raises a red flag when you have a 10-year-old who's been penetrated, right? I just think there's so many levels to this that there should, and I will say this, there has to be a safe place for me, I think, and maybe I'm wrong, I'm not an expert, within 48 hours of the child being secured until some form of an investigation happens. You report to a teacher, you go home, and you're waiting on someone to come. But you're there with a perpetrator who 9 times out of 10 in a small community knows it. That gets around real fast. Nothing's private. And some teacher calls someone else and say, girl, Larry's child came in and said she's being sexually abused. That perpetrator, and I think we need to deal with the real life experience of that perpetrator, especially in a small community, knows before that child ever walks through the door that he or she has reported it.
And it's just so difficult because no matter what the child loses and the trauma on a child, regardless of if it's a child being removed from their family, whether it's the sexual abuse, the physical abuse, no matter what, it's all very traumatic.
I know it's,
So you
it,
have to
we
care-
yeah. I know we have to weigh the balance of the removal of the child from his or her family.
Right.
You know, and that's why I say it's a hard job. I'm not. I think you guys do an excellent job with the resources you have, and your hearts are big. But I'm very uncomfortable with that child having to go home after making that type of accusation. And if it is true, then we're sending them home to the perpetrator. The rumor mill hits as soon as the child, it shouldn't, but these adults are not confidential. The rumor mill hits as soon as that child leaves the principal's office or the guidance counselor's office. And by the time that child's at home, that perpetrator has 24 plus hours, like in your situation, to convince them to retract their story. And I think that if a child makes that type of allegation, let's just be real, something has happened, whether it's the fault of their parents or not, something has already happened trauma-wise in that child's life, or mentally, that the child needs attention anyway.
Well,
You know, you get what I'm saying? Like, let's say you falsely accuse your father. There is something there that says this child is screaming for attention. His or her parents didn't do anything wrong. Let's say at the end of it, it's a false allegation. You still have a child that decided to walk in school and make a false allegation, which means that child needs some type of attention anyway.
right.
You know what I mean? I don't foresee where, one case we had where the guy was innocent. He spanked her. She went to school and told it. But who devises that in their mind at 8 and 7 years old to say, my father whooped me, so I'm going to get removed from the home. Let me go to school and tell them that he abused me. There's something that triggers, even in a child with a false allegation, that it's a red flag. Something's wrong. Not that somebody in the house is doing something wrong in the case of a false allegation, but this child needs some attention to go this far in the stretch of their imagination. So I just think we're at that point when that child makes that allegation, we're dealing with a situation anyway.
And many times we do receive the report after the fact, but one of the things that we do is we really encourage our staff to interview the children, if at all possible, at school where they're not in the view or within the vicinity of the alleged perpetrator, and there's more openness to talk and freedom. So.
And that's just, look, I don't know, we can't fix everything, but that 48-hour gap is a killer for me, that send somebody back home.
I understand.
Miss Michelle, before you leave the table, you say when possible. So when a case is when it's not possible, is it at the time that it may be made, the timing of in which the allegation is made, or is it just the resources to be able to get the persons out to do the investigation?
Okay, and let me ask, can you clarify when you say?
So I'm responding to your response to Senator Jackson, because you said when it's possible. You tried to do it at the school. So I'm trying to figure out, when is it not possible? Is it at the time when the allegation is made, like the time of the day, or is it because of the resources and being able to get the person out there?
Yeah, a lot of it is situational based. It's if the child is school aged. If the child is not school age,
Okay.
of course we can't interview them at school. Or if it's summertime, or if the child is not in school because of certain reasons, or we receive a report after hours and we need to respond immediately. So those are situations where we would not go and interview at the school.
But other than those situations that you just highlighted, you guys try to make sure that you do the investigation or the questioning at the school.
It is strongly encouraged. Yes, I would say try, but it's not an absolute based on the case-by-case situation.
So in those cases, why isn't it? That's what I'm trying to get to.
Okay, so another situation may be that if we're doing a joint investigation with law enforcement, that we want to do one at a CAC center, a child advocacy center, or that law enforcement, may request for us to, okay, let's do this jointly at this location. So like I said, every situation is different, but we try to encourage our employees when there is the opportunity to conduct an interview at school or in an environment away from the perpetrator to do that when, like I said, when at all possible and when it's feasible.
Okay. That still didn't really answer my question, but
I'm trying.
okay. All right. Senator Mizell?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. So, not school, an
Yeah.
800 number, you get a call. What, do you track? Do you track every time you get a complaint on your 800 number line as to the efficiency of the process and the outcome?
Yes, there's a lot of outcome measures that we do track. So one of them is the number of reports that we receive. One of them is the number of the time frame and how we assign those investigations. One is which reports are accepted or not accepted, repeat maltreatment. We really report on.
What do you mean reports accepted, not accepted?
So we report on, or we count the data of, okay, we receive a number of reports that come into the hotline every day. Of those reports that are called in, how many of those are accepted for investigation, that they meet the criteria that's outlined in the law for accepting it for investigation?
And is that the parent or guardian is culpable?
Well, there's multiple factors. Does it meet the definition of abuse or neglect? You know, also, does it meet the criteria for the definition of caretaker within the children's code? Those are two key factors there, as well as the age. You know,
Right.
is the report being called in, whatever the case may be.
So when someone calls in and they give you the information and after looking at it, you realize it does not meet the level of a proceeding, does somebody call that number back or contact that person and say, listen, we're not going to be able to handle this, you need to go in a different direction?
Okay, we do not call the individual back. However, what we do have is a letter. So if you make a report to the hotline and you indicate, I want to know if this was accepted or not, then they have the ability to provide their name and address, and we will mail them a letter that indicates whether the report is accepted or not.
Okay, well, that helps. Okay, there was more that I'll let it go because I know we've got to get to this auditor's report. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Well, let's see. As we are taking testimony from Mr. Eugene Collins, we're going to ask Emily Dixon and let's see,
Julie Ford, I think. Yeah.
Julie Floyd to come to the table, please. Thank you. And they're from the auditor's office.
Thank you, Senator Barrow. Senator
Thank you.
Mizell.
Introduce yourself. I know who you are. Thank you for being here.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Eugene Collins. I'm the president of the Baton Rouge branch of the NAACP. I have been working alongside Ms. Porter, who showed up in Baton Rouge one night looking for help. I want to say this here. And as I sat here this morning, I listened to the department head of the Department of Children and Family Services tell us what her job was not. I couldn't help but think back to our mission statement, which is we fight race-based discrimination. But when a person shows up in the middle of the night saying that they have a kid that's been sex trafficked, although I didn't have the resources to assign somebody to look into such a case because I didn't have anybody with that background, I decided to look into it myself because that's what you should do in a situation like that. In addition to that, in sitting with Ms. Porter, I found that Ms. Porter had made complaint after complaint after complaint after complaint for a number of months, and none of those complaints had been sustained. Not one complaint was sustained until I decided to put Ms. Porter on my radio show one Sunday. And then after that, that complaint was sustained. Some short time later, Mr. John Mack was arrested as a result of that complaint Ms. Porter had been trying to file for months. Mr. John Mack is the uncle of one of your colleagues. I have sent you guys, with some of y'all, an investigative document totaling somewhat 40 pages of all of our findings. Findings that were not looked at or overlooked since 2015. This young lady had been trying to be heard, trying to have her voice heard, trying to have this situation looked into, and nobody did. They wouldn't even take the complaint. So when someone sits here and says that it's not their job to be an arresting agency, but it is their job to be an agency that accepts the complaint, and that did not happen in this process whatsoever. Just last week, there was an incident of alleged sexual abuse at a local school, and that person called to file a complaint with DCFS, and they were told that they could not handle that situation. I have the recording, which I can forward to you this body if needed. This is a systematic failure that needs to be monitored at a greater level, because we can't sit here and talk about what our job isn't when kids are being sex trafficked. And we can no longer say that Ms. Porter isn't right because arrests have started being made. This was a failure, and somebody should be held accountable for it. Thank you.
Don't move. Come, Senator Jackson.
Yes, ma'am.
I do have a question. I'm not familiar with this, so I'm going to ask some keen questions.
Yes,
You're
ma'am.
saying in the state of Louisiana, a child reported being sexually abused.
Yes, ma'am. That child had a forensic interview, as well as her older sister had a forensic interview in 2015. I'm not sure on the second child's interview, but I know the older sister's interview was consistent.
So I'm trying to, yeah, it's my point. The child had a forensic interview.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, which parish is this in?
The original report was actually made in Orleans Parish
The child was living in Orleans Parish?
at the time. That report moved to Livingston Parish,
Okay.
where a detective testified a few weeks ago in court that although they had the case, some information was not made readily available to them, and they had had that case in their possession since 2019. Mr. John Mack, who is now behind bars for this incident, also had a very similar incident in 2010, 2011, where he allegedly assaulted a woman after blocking her car in the middle of a road. Again, the uncle of one of your colleagues.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask him some keen questions because I want to know.
Yes, ma'am.
What? No, I understand he's in jail, but I'm trying to figure out the people that help. So, law enforcement. I mean, I'm just being honest. If it's law enforcement agents, let's talk about it because this is crazy. So you're telling me it was reported in Orleans?
It was reported in Orleans. It was then transferred to Livingston Parish.
Why was it transferred? Did the child live in Livingston Parish?
Oh, your guess on that would be as good as mine.
Well, I'm asking, are you aware? Because I know you had time with this family. You said,
Yes, ma'am.
Did the child live in Livingston Parish?
So the child did live in Livingston Parish at a point.
Yeah. They can come together because this is kind of crazy.
No, Grimion. State Police Grimion.
And maybe they can't testify on ongoing investigation, but
Maybe there's some key things he can speak to because it is an ongoing investigation that certainly has willfully fallen short of the proper protocols, in my opinion, that needed to take place.
yeah, let's talk about protocol. This was first reported to who? Yes,
You're asking,
yes,
okay,
yes.
Chad Grimion from Louisiana State Police. Again, as you mentioned, I can't get into the specifics of a ongoing criminal investigation that we are part of. What I can tell you is we were made aware of an investigation, and we worked an investigation concerning a case related to this in Jefferson Parish.
Okay, so my question is this, so you won't get into particulars. When you found this out, are you also not only investigating the perpetrator, but any law enforcement agent or any agent who did not or failed to follow through?
We are not investigating a law enforcement agency or agent who failed to investigate. We are working collectively with law enforcement and other parishes as part of a joint investigation concerning this case.
What, I'm gonna ask why. If a child has had 7 forensic interviews, that means forensic wise, law enforcement had to be involved 7 times.
Right.
And my question is going to be, why hasn't, I understand you're investigating the nature of the perpetrator who's been arrested, but why has there not been and we talk about this with police brutality, but I'm talking about it with everything. You know me.
Yes, ma'am.
Why are those law enforcement agents not being investigated for failure to follow through or whatever? This is one of the times, I mean, I'm just being honest, and I'm stumbling because I'm baffled. Why? If 7 forensic investigations, why are we not investigating each agency that it was reported to?
Senator Jackson, the agency that was investigating the complaint continued to investigate the complaint.
Through 7 forensic interviews? I mean, I'm just going to be real, because when I hear 7, I'm like, who continues to 7
there's-
forensic interviews to investigate? In order to cross the threshold to get to a second one, something red flag has to appear, right? Then you get to a third one, there has to be some red flags to because I do this.
I understand, Senator. I can tell you.
And at you, I know you weren't a part of it, but I'm
Right, and I was not a part of it. I was a part, or my agency and my unit was a part of the investigation in Jefferson Parish. Collectively, we worked together with the Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office, and without going into the specifics of that, I think an arrest was made on behalf of, or in Livingston Parish concerning this matter maybe 2 weeks ago, if memory serves me right.
It was about a month ago.
So, and I'm asking,
Sure.
but I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm going to say it on the record because I want to be absolved once I hear something like this. Every person that investigated this matter, where it went through 7 investigations, every agency needs to be investigated for their protocol and their procedure and how they dropped the ball. That's because I don't want to keep asking what the obvious is. And who does that? Does the Attorney General has the authority? Because if so, I'm going to make a call to him. Who has the authority to go back and look at this lengthy investigation where the child was left in that situation? Who has the authority?
I can't answer that. I don't know who would be responsible for that. I can tell you that as a supervisor of the Special Victims Unit of the Louisiana State Police, the matter in which we investigated was thoroughly and accurately investigated, without a doubt.
So this investigation is the one that's currently going on.
Yes, ma'am. We currently have an investigation that is ongoing.
You weren't a part of the investigations that involved almost 7 forensic interviews before the child voice was heard.
The Louisiana State Police was not involved in that investigation initially.
So I don't know who it is. I'm gonna call the Attorney General, and I respect your investigation part of it, but you're investigating the actual matter of child abuse. I venture to say, and I'm going to talk to our Attorney General, that someone needs to be investigating the agencies who failed to report this.
And it seems like, Senator, that there is no one that's really the go-to person, and therefore that lacks the level of accountability. Unfortunately, state police, right now, there's nothing in law, which is something we need to address, that allows them to investigate another law enforcement agency when they have a case under investigation.
I thought it was.
Well,
There's some kind of task force or something that you could, but is that only on police brutality? Is there?
there was an ongoing investigation that a sheriff's office was investigating. We, the state police, was investigating a separate incident that occurred in Jefferson Parish, and that's where our investigation focused at, because Livingston Parish was investigating their particular case involving this.
But when they are investigating, you guys cannot investigate them while they have the investigation open. Is that my understanding?
I mean, they have an open investigation, and the sheriff is the chief law enforcement official in a parish, and they have an open investigation. So They are the ones that are investigating. I mean, we are not going to come in and take over an investigation in Livingston Parish.
No, I understand.
Or in East Baton Rouge, or in Rapides, Caddo, or
I
anywhere.
understand that. I'm not talking about the investigation of the molestation. I'm asking who in this state, whether it be state police, attorney general, when someone files a complaint, has a complaint been filed against these departments?
Yes, ma'am. So, and there's a little bit to add to it. Livingston Parish actually closed the investigation. The investigation was just reopened after some media came out recently. In addition to that, the sheriff in Washington Parish also received a complaint from Ms. Porter. The sheriff in Washington Parish, as a result, decided to schedule a visit with the supposed man that was trafficking her, John Mack, the uncle of one of your colleagues, to come to her facility to visit the child that he was trafficking.
He scheduled what? I'm
A
sorry.
visit with the child.
So I'm about to ask this.
And we gonna probably have to.
Yeah, I'll
We're
deal
going
with
to
it
probably
off
have
the
to take some of
record,
this
'cause
off
this
the
is
record,
crazy.
yeah, because it is still open. And so Senator Mizell, I have us now where everybody's been added in. Senator Mizell,
I'll be
We'll
really
jump
quick.
in real
and,
quick.
And I'm going to take it to the next step, okay? Because your outrage I've felt for months.
Yeah, this
Okay.
is crazy.
But that's the whole idea of having the auditor's report, because this whole situation is a study in what not should be done. From the care of her, from the whole process, the confusion with, I love the state police, but I'm saying there's been layers and layers of head scratching on this. So we have an opportunity now, my lady friends, to look at what we can do to make sure no other victim ever has to go through this. Because on top of what you're feeling, Senator Jackson, this child had all those forensic interviews before she ever got any support.
I think, and that's my concern, that nobody's investigating the people that hit it.
So we're going to fix that. Can we agree? we're
therein
gonna
lies
fix it?
the
Yeah,
bigger
I wanna
problem that
fix
we really began to start talking about early on. That hopefully, prayerfully, that this never happens again, because what happened in this situation was the utmost travesty that ever could happen to anybody, any child, with all of the right protocols supposedly in place.
And I'm not saying the state police do. Let me get on the record. I don't know a
Yeah.
lot about this, so I'm not saying that you did anything wrong. I understand you were not the investigating agency, and I'm just, so I'll finish up with this, because y'all know I'm real concerned. This is my first, right?
Yeah, I know.
When a complaint is made on a law enforcement agency, who investigates that complaint? Since a complaint was made, who did you make the complaint with?
Ms. Porter alerted state police to all of the different agencies that she had went through, and that was done about 3 months ago.
So you filed the complaint with the state police.
I started reaching out to everybody when she started revealing to us. We went to multiple law enforcement entities, started with Washington Parish. I've made a report to the FBI.
A little bit closer to the mic. Be closer to the mic,
I reached
please.
out to once I got contacted by the sheriff in my area, who asked me could the rapist come and visit the child,
And what's your
alleged
area?
rapist, Washington Parish. Like we ran into so many different barriers, like nobody was listening. And at this time, Mr. John Mack was coming to the facility with the child's biological mother and trying to gain access to her. It wasn't until we had a meeting with DCFS that we had a Zoom meeting, because the child had told DCFS that if she's forced to return to that environment, that she would just die in peace and kill herself. And at that time, we made a meeting with DCFS via Zoom, begging and pleading them to intervene, because at this point, we have reported more than 10, 12 times to get some help, because every time her biological mother, who we know is the person that was trafficking her and allowing her to be abused by Mr. Mack, they're coming to the facility, and we're trying to do the right thing by doing the reports. So every time they come to get her, we're supposed to give them to her. And so we literally had to be put in a position to where ethically and morally we're like, no, you can't, we're not gonna do this. And so we would have to run them off from our facility. We would call law enforcement to come. Washington Parish sheriffs have had to escort him off the property several times. And it just got to the point to where after the DCFS Zoom call that we had, they said Livingston Parish had closed the case, that the FBI was not involved. It was Mr. Craig Miller on this Zoom call, and a few other people in the investigations department of DCFS, and it was Kathy Kusimo from Children's Advocacy Center in Hammond, who has been a very big advocate for our girl, and she even begged him, please, she begged them, look at her interviews. I've met her, I've looked at her interviews, her and her sister interview, because she wasn't the original cry from our facility, that she is to go back to her family. And I think that is when desperation kicked in for us, because we had looked this child in the face and said we were going to protect you. And that's how I ended up, the help didn't come until I contacted Governor Edwards' office at the child trafficking office. And it was like my last ditch effort. I mean, this is the night before, after the man is at our window with flashlights looking in the windows.
So wait, you went through several law enforcement entities.
3.
FBI. Mm-hmm. You contacted the state police, or once you contacted Governor Edwards?
That's when state police got involved.
So I'm gonna ask I'm gonna put it in a way where you don't breach any confidentiality. A report has been made that 3 law enforcement agencies in this state covered up, for lack of a better word, or did not fully investigate a sex trafficking issue. Is your department the correct department to investigate those 3 law enforcement agencies?
If a report was made, I am not aware that a report was made in the way that you're phrasing that to us. Okay. I can tell you this. In working with the FBI on this, it was investigated by them, and there was not a federal nexus for them.
Right, I understand the
handle
federal.
that.
So this is the question.
I want to be on the record to say that, though, because
Yeah.
people think that just because they're
Because
involved.
it's not sex trafficking. If you
Correct.
traffic them across state lines, feds come in. Feds only have certain jurisdiction. Otherwise, it lies within the parish jurisdiction or the state police.
That's correct.
So, question, because we don't know if a report was made. Are you the correct entity if this young lady, on behalf of those children, want to file a report against the 3 agencies? Do they file it with you to be investigated? Because I understand you're investigating the actual crime itself, but I think there are other crimes here.
And if there is, and they wish to file a complaint with us, certainly they can. We have a detective section that does handle investigations of that sort.
And you do handle investigations of other agencies?
We do, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is the thing that I'm asking. I am asking that you, since we're questionable on, you filed the report for the child. If you are the proper person, right, I'm thinking, and when you walk out of here today, you find out where to go file a report against those 3 agencies. And I can stand up at any day. Maybe, and I'm not saying they did anything wrong, but I think we're all going to be left with the question of what happened until state police properly investigates all of it. So I understand what right now you're dealing with investigation with the gentleman I just received who got arrested, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to see a total investigation into this matter. And he has just said on the record that they do investigate those matters. I think a report has to be filed, and this is just from what I'm hearing, to investigate it all. If you, from what your testimony has been, the 2 of you, that you feel like 3 different agencies failed to investigate this matter.
And we've went on record with the state police in saying that.
Multiple times.
Multiple times.
And so is there a separate report that has to be filed for you all to trigger an investigation on the former investigations that didn't seem to take place?
I'm say that again.
I know, right? Is there a special report that has to be filed if they're reporting that 3 agencies had this matter and covered it up or did not properly investigate it.
I'm not sure that there's a special report, Senator. I do not know of any report that's been lodged with the state police involving law enforcement agents that have failed to investigate this.
So how do we lodge that complaint? How do they, so we'll have it on the record and make sure it's filed today. And I'm very serious about this because this is ugly. Like, you keep taking a child back into a situation. This is ugly. So where do they go if they want to leave here now and go file those complaints? Specifically complaints of the agencies, against the agencies. Where do they go?
Louisiana State Police at 7901 Independence Boulevard, Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
And who do they ask for?
The captain is,
Because I'm about clearing stuff up. I just don't like.
She's the new
we just had a range of promotions.
Yeah.
Linda Murphy with State Police.
Speaking to the mic.
I love to
Belinda
see
Murphy
women in
with
law
State
enforcement.
Introduce yourself.
Captain Belinda Murphy with Louisiana State Police, the commander over the Special Victims Unit. If they want to go to the detective section,
Speak into
there
the
is
mic.
Captain Pat Bradley is in Baton Rouge, and he is over all of Region 1. And if it's on the North Shore, if you're saying that it was in
I think they said New
Washington.
Orleans or
Okay,
Washington.
so
They've
he
named
will
the
have
number.
all of the North Shore and Orleans Parish. So he would be the captain that would be the commander over the Detectives Bureau that could take that complaint for you.
Now, let's say there's someone involved that's not in Region 1. Will he pass it on to the region? Let's say there's a law enforcement agency that's not in
And
Region
he
1.
would likely want to keep it all together
Right.
as a single investigation. And his officers, his detectives, could travel anywhere in the state.
Now, my request doesn't say I think the sheriff of Washington Parish did anything wrong. I don't know about this case, so let me put that on the record. But I do know that some serious allegations have been made. And I know past arresting the gentleman that actually perpetrated the sex trafficking, to the extent that if what I'm hearing is true, that 7 forensic interviews took place. And I know sometimes you bring a child back in, if it went through 3 different departments and now there's arrests being made, that was some substantiated from the first complaint.
And Senator
No,
Jackson,
he didn't start after she complained.
I did want to clear up, as you had asked earlier, you were asking, would we go in and just take an investigation away from a sheriff? We have to be asked to come in. If they have an investigation, we can't just go in and take an
By whom?
investigation over. By that sheriff. Now, if someone is making a complaint against that entity, that's different. But if a sheriff's office and there's no complaint lodged against that agency, we can't just go in and say, okay, we're going to take over your investigation. We have to
No,
be
yeah.
invited in. Now, this makes it different if you're saying you're making a complaint against the agency failing to do something, or a malfeasance deal where they knew something was happening and they did nothing to stop
I am
it.
asking you sincerely, not for a bounty hunt purpose. I don't know who was right and wrong in this. I don't know if the sheriff even knew who took it in his office and what they didn't or didn't do with it. Because I always say that, we're away from our offices all day right now. Someone could walk in our office and it never gets to our hand. And we all know that. We've dealt with that before, maybe not on the serious nature, but my constituents see me out in Super One and Walmart and say, I called you 10 days ago, and you're checking your email, you're checking everything. You're like, no, you didn't call me. Then you go and sit at your assistant's desk and you're flipping through papers and you start seeing stuff. So that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that from what I'm hearing and what I just tried to briefly read, an investigation into the perpetrator is not enough.
Yeah. And Senator Jackson, to add on to that, not only was the 7 forensic interviews not paid attention to, there were also 12 complaints lodged by Ms. Porter to DCFS that were not sustained. And we know they should have been sustained as of today because Mr. John Mack, the uncle of one of your colleagues, was arrested.
You keep saying that. I'm trying not to get to that point.
Yes, ma'am.
Listen, because I want to be fair to everyone. No, y'all stop. Y'all know how I am, right? Okay. So I'm going to say this, and DCFS knows I love and support them. And it's going to be hard for me to say. But I'm always fair and equitable in what I do. You lodge 12 complaints against them. When you go to the state police, you talk about that too. Now, and I love you guys. But we can't play with a child like that. And I'm not saying DCF played with it. Maybe when you called the law enforcement agencies, they didn't give you anything. But that even perpetuates more that somewhere in this there was a cover up. And we need to know who DCFS talked to at these agencies that didn't give you what you needed. Because I'm assuming with DCFS, the way they've been vigilant in sex trafficking, that something happened to that sort. I'm prayerful and hoping, because I know you guys. I've worked with you. But that even matters. And so put it in there. Because somewhere, someone was hiding information. And I think those 12 calls to DCFS, the 12 complaints, knowing, state police knowing who you called each time and what information you received is going to be just as important as the contact with those agencies. So is there anybody else you reported to and they didn't listen?
No, ma'am, but I can send you the 40-page investigative document that we have. I'll
Yeah, I
email it
want
to
it.
you. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
And that's my ask of you. And I know you're going to do the right thing. I do.
Absolutely.
But if it hasn't been a formal complaint filed on that matter, it needs to be. And I'm just grateful that the governor that I supported, and it's no political, this is just truthful, wife has the foresight to start a sexual trafficking task force that when it hit their office, there was somewhere for it to go finally. Because I'd be telling you to investigate him too, and I love him. I'm just telling you because it's a child.
Yeah.
And it's not right. And over again, this child was screaming for help. Her sister, you say, screamed for help?
She's been reporting this for over a decade.
Yeah, so 10 years of these children being sexually abused, law enforcement hearing about it, reports being filed. You could have saved the second child for never going through this had someone sent it to you guys. So when you look at it, you got one child over a decade, right? Then her little sister comes along and starts being abused, is what I'm assuming, right?
The other way around, the older sister first and then the little sister, but the older sister was taken out of the home. The little sister was still left in the environment.
Wait, hold up. So,
Yeah.
because I'm gonna try to grasp this. There was enough substantiation that the older sister had been abused.
She ended up going to stay with her dad. The little sister was left with the family, and access to Mr. Mack continued. I also want you all to know that this child, from day one, me meeting her, she said nothing is going to be done.
Wow.
She's now angry with me because we've gotten so involved that she feels like we're all in danger because some people are too powerful to be touched.
So who investigates DCFS? Because we're going to need their records to know who they contacted. Or do you not investigate DC? Because I want to take them on the right path. Do you not investigate?
Indiana State Police will investigate a complaint that is lodged against an entity, but what we need to do is figure out if it's the Attorney General's office that would be the better agency, or Louisiana State Police, or we could work it jointly.
Yeah, I want to see it jointly. And I'll tell you why. This is 10 years and a decade worth of foolishness. While a child was left in a home and abused. And maybe there are other cases out here, but this is the only one that came before us today. And I think we have a fiduciary duty in what we do for our constituents every day to see this thing through. And maybe in the grasp of what's happening and the investigation being conducted, we'll hear about others. But this young lady, and I'm sorry, I cannot remember your name. 'Cause I'm telling you, my mind is just out of it right now. Mrs. Porter said that every time she came, it was like they were working together. And she's talking about from years ago, and then we're sitting here in a case where people have been working together. I don't think anybody ignores that anymore. And I just want to, and I know I'm long-winded because y'all knowing about this, my mind is blown. Because you hear testimony from Ms. Porter that everyone worked together every time she was arrested, every time she came in contact with anyone. That was what, 15 years ago maybe? About 10 years ago. Now we're sitting here and we're fast forwarding to today, and they're saying everyone worked together. I can tell you why trafficking is bad in Louisiana, because it's the climate. It's the climate. It's the
Also-
climate that happened at LSU. It's the climate that happened here. It's the climate that girls are being ignored, whether they're 54, 34, 24, or 14, or 4. Women in Louisiana are being ignored. And maybe not by the people in this room. I dare not say that because I know each of you in some capacity have worked hard. But somewhere this has become the acceptable thing, status quo, to protect men who violate women of all ages. That I've sit through too many committees. It is just the bottom line. It is the acceptable status quo to protect men who violate women. So if you want to do it, I guess the thing is, come on to Louisiana. Because that's what we're screaming when I sat through the LSU committee hearings. Thank God for a new president, right? And you're sitting through this hearing. It is the continuous pattern. I thought it was, college students and it was wrong, but now I'm hearing it's 9 and 10-year-olds. Where law enforcement is, and younger, where law enforcement is mishandling complaints. And look, I don't want to address my colleague. I don't know if my colleague knew anything. Let me say this to you. I don't know everything my family members are doing. Besides my immediate, and I'm not taking up for them, I'm just telling you, maybe not. But besides you can go home with your child and I know they're a Unabomber now. And I always tell people that. So I don't ever go and, I'm not being funny. Think about it. The parents of the children that went and shot up schools across this country didn't know that their kids were going to shoot up schools that day, nor that they ever thought of it. You can lay next to somebody in bed every night and not realize that he or she is molesting your child. It happens. But I do know, and that's why I'm not going to address and not being disrespected comments about my colleague, because he didn't live in a house with this man. I'm not saying he knew or didn't know, but you can live in a house with somebody every day and not know. You really can. You can. So I'm saying that because those allegations are out there, and if this man was arrested, something from 10 years of a decade or something, and somebody else another child being taken out of home, there's some substantiation that something was ignored. And instead of letting those people keep working in law enforcement, and I can say this, if one of my colleagues did, if I did, call us up on it, investigate it. You know what I mean? We have to get to that point, because this friendship deal in Louisiana with law enforcement and others ignoring stuff of women being abused is getting out of hand. We're here constantly. We've been at this for a year and a half?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Senators,
even
I
though
promise
actually it
you,
has
if
not been a
there's
year and a half.
complaint
I take
with a
that
child
back.
Victim, we are going to investigate it fully, and it doesn't matter if it's a policeman, it doesn't matter if it's a legislator, it doesn't matter if it's a politician. We're going to get to the bottom of it.
And I'm not saying
And
I
don't know the specifics of
Right.
this case. This is the first time I'm hearing it as well, and I don't know who in Louisiana State Police, if you did make a complaint, who
Well,
the
she
complaint
said
was
she
made
didn't.
to.
She
Okay,
said,
and that's,
yeah.
We
so
did.
who did you speak with?
When we did, when we went to the Children's Advocacy Center, so after I met with Senator Mizell, I left, came to Baton Rouge. We met with, that's when I reached out to Eugene for help. We ended up meeting with Mr. Chad Grimion and Nicole Barbie at the Children's Advocacy Center. And I said very candidly, this went to Livingston Parish to die. We have been reporting and calling. I laid everything out on the line for them. I say they have no desire to investigate. And at that time, if it was something else that I needed to do, because I've had very in-depth conversations with Miss Barbie, and I met with Mr.
this is the
Grimion, no
case
one
that's-
else told me to do anything. They didn't say, go here, do that, because I would have done that. I've taken this child to 3 different parishes to make reports in my own car, stayed out to midnight to get her
Well, that's what I'm
protected.
asking. So this is the case that's recent that you're saying is still under investigation.
But
Okay,
it's only,
that's
my
why I'm-
concern is this, it's only under investigation for the perpetrator. This young lady is saying that when she went to state police, if I understand her, that she also made complaints against those law enforcement agencies.
I told them about the sheriff contacting me, and on behalf of, he said it was on behalf of your colleague, Mr. Mack, to ask if his uncle can come and visit with the child that he had been raping, allegedly. The sheriff told me that. I asked the sheriff, I said, Sheriff, are you aware that you're asking the man that has been raping this child allegedly to visit with her? He said, no, he was not aware of it. And I said, well, I'm not sure why you're not aware. It's your agency that came out, took the initial report. It's your agency that came out and has had to escort him off our property multiple times, the alleged rapist. We've called your agents out. And so he said that he proceeded to tell me who Mr. John Mack was related to, and he said it was him that asked me to call. That's what the sheriff told me.
I'll give our colleague a courtesy because I didn't know his name was going to come up in this, but I'm going to give him a courtesy call. I'm definitely unaware.
And when we had the conversation at the Children's Advocacy Center, I had conversations with Nicole Barbie because I didn't even want, at this point, I didn't know who to trust. I was terrified. I was trying to protect her because, again, you have a child that you love and that you're trying to protect telling you that people within this system are going to hurt her if she talks. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm in like the TV at this point because I thought the system would work. That's why we were reporting. That's why we were calling. We went to Washington Parish, we went to Tangi, we reported to we went all over with these reports. It wasn't until I reached out to the trafficking office and the NAACP and Senator Mizell that we got some assistance. And at that time, everyone who couldn't get involved, literally, they couldn't get involved. DCFS told us blatantly that they could not get involved. It was out of their realm. But it wasn't until we got the trafficking office and everybody, these three people, Senator Mizell, the NAACP, and the trafficking office, now everybody can get involved. And that's all I wanted from the first place is protect her while you investigate, which is something that you've been saying. Protect the child and investigate. Just do your thorough investigation.
Let me say this. This goes past a 48-hour protection. This goes past a week protection. This goes into 7 forensic interviews. This goes into a child being in a safe place because she was with you, right?
Yeah, she's been with me
She's been with you and a half, and this perpetrator is allowed to come and see her. This goes besides
We
protecting.
never allowed him to come.
I know you didn't,
Yes,
but I
ma'am.
mean,
But
had
he
you
came
not
several times.
had you not had the strength to just say forget the law, I know right from wrong at this point.
And I just want to say she
No,
was
I'm just- you
also, she was also, and this goes back to policy. Like I want better systems that protect our children.
We have to have better
have to-
systems that protect our children.
Right, but her forensic interviews, her first forensic interviews, the rapist took her and her mom.
So wait, she made a. So I know that ain't proper.
No, yeah, but it's the truth.
Look, I'm going Ebonic. I know this can't be proper,
Yeah.
right? I know that when somebody makes an accusation against someone, right, that person's not supposed to bring them in for a forensic interview.
Her mom and her alleged rapist brought her and her sister to the first interviews. They trained, they prepped them in the car on what to say and what not to say. So this is why it is so devastating when I'm the person why I get so, like Eugene is always like, are you okay? I get so angry because I looked this kid in the face and promised her that no one would hurt her again.
And you've gone through this yourself.
And I went through it myself and I wasn't heard. I wasn't heard. And that was 31 years ago.
And Senator Jackson, I'm just gonna say this, and you work with me enough to know I don't mix words.
Right.
DCFS is gonna tell you this woman is incredible. But what I'm gonna tell you is John Mack is in jail without bond.
They're going to tell me she's not credible. Well, no. If he's in jail without bond, he's credible.
Exactly.
Whatever was being said, and I'm not talking. Look, I know how this goes. I'm a criminal defense lawyer, right? Your client goes to jail without bond. There's some credibility. So
At the end of the day, all I want is for our kids to be protected. I didn't want to sit in this seat. I don't want to be in this platform. That's not what I seek. I work with children because it helps heal me and my hurt. But this put it right in my face that people don't listen to children.
So I understand forensic interviews generally mean that, it's a forensic interview. Was a child taken to a healthcare provider?
She reported when she came to us, we were her 12th facility. She reported that there had been reports from every facility that she had ever been to. It was also reported to the schools that she went to, but this is in a small rural parish in Livingston where the principal or people know the family. And this child was very adamant from day one that the family is very powerful and that nothing was going to happen from day one. She not only shared that sentiment with me, I think she shared it with the senator. She has said from day one, nothing is going to happen. when for me, I felt a sense of hopelessness, and I've shared that with Mr. Collins. When, like, I was so desperate. I was like, what am I going to do? I got to keep this child from killing herself, because she said they're going to send me back. I know that. I know they're going to send me back, and I'm not going to live in that hell anymore. And she said that to DCFS. We left that Zoom call. I literally had to give our clinical team the day off because they were crying and they were upset. It's like, now what do we do? And that same night, we have the perpetrator, or people looking in our windows with flashlights. And you got 32 other kids that are now freaked out because everybody knows her story. They go to group together. You know, they share these things. And that's when we came to Baton Rouge, and I reached out. Reaching out to the trafficking office was like my last ditch hope. Like, what else can we do other than running away?
Right.
Because it was we had did everything. We went through every source. That we were mandated reporters that reported, and nothing happened.
So you're a mandatory reporter.
Absolutely.
She was at 11 other facilities, including schools. So I want you to put in your report that you're going to file today your complaint about the schools too.
They reported them.
The schools did report. So our mandatory reporters are reporting, right? But then nothing's being done. That's what it sounds like.
That's exactly what's happening.
And we still have to complete the investigation, and I was not prepared for this case. We were here
understand. Yeah, I
because Dr.
understand. I
Hunter was going to
wasn't
talk
either.
on human trafficking, or I would have read the report. New
I
to
know,
that section, and I would have been prepared to have read the report and been able to answer
Well,
better.
I think to err on the side of caution, what I've heard today is that you're investigating a perpetrator. To err on the side of caution, I really believe you should go to the station as she has directed who to talk to, and anyone that you believe ignored this, anyone that it was reported to. I think it's time for a complaint to be filed, and the innocent will rise to the top, and the guilty will float to the bottom of jail. That's just, it's the bottom line. You know, that's going to be my advice, because I don't believe in cover-ups, and I don't believe in not protecting children. So to that extent, go file your report. List everything. Let's vet it out one by one. Let's see where the system is broken. There may not have been something intentional, but I believe with DCFS, not trying to be funny, but they could have called every law enforcement agency and they couldn't have given them anything. We don't know what they received on all of those 12 calls. I mean, that's the thing. If you're saying it's a local cover-up, Senator Mizell could have called and they would have told her, oh, she's just crazy and there's nothing wrong with it. Right?
Yeah, well, I don't know.
That, you know what I'm saying? They could have told her, oh no, it's nothing. They may not have told her about the forensics interviews. I don't know if they told DCFS about any of that. Because the truth is, if you're saying it's local cover-ups going on and it's bouncing from office to office, just file a complaint and report everybody. Let the innocent rise to the top. Let those who cover up rise to the bottom.
Sink to the bottom.
Think to the bottom right.
Definitely follow this whole protocol that Senator Jackson has taken us down. For me,
I'm sorry,
so
guys.
for me, this is very emotional. Some of this I did know, some of it I didn't know. But I did have the chance to finally meet the victim, or our victorious young lady. And the one thing I have heard you say over and over, Ms. Porter, from the table, that definitely bothers me, is that she said nothing was going to happen.
Right.
So she has no hope.
None. She keeps telling me to stop having hope.
The one thing that I pray to God that comes out of this is that we are able to give her that level of hope. The other thing that really bothers me is how many more children are like her that we don't know. All of this that has transpired is so unacceptable. And you did hit it on the head, Senator Jackson. It is just the complete, blatant disrespect for women, female gender in general, just in general. I'm trying to find something else, but that's what it really comes down to. It has been just a complete disrespect. And if you had heard some of the testimony from the women in terms of some of the perpetrators, some of the people that are involved, it is sickening. People you would never, ever imagine. People we call our leaders, people in respectable positions, high paying positions, that are committing these acts, who are the monsters. When children can tell you they see the white stuff on the bed. Nah, no. We can't stand for this. We cannot allow this. This can never, ever be okay. And it shouldn't be with nobody. And I know it's not with anybody in this room, but the people that are listening to us, because there are a lot of people that are listening. And some of those people are the ones that we're talking about.
I'm with you, Senator Barrow.
Yeah, I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
Thank y'all so much.
I'm
I
with
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you,
with you.
Senators.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Y'all have been so patient. We appreciate y'all so much. This report is so reflective and gives a lot of great information. So can y'all please come and speak to the report?
I'm sorry. You got to stop for a second when you hear 10 years of a decade worth of a child being abused and everybody ignored her.
Totally understand. Well, good afternoon.